Imagine you're looking at two locked rooms on opposite sides of the planet. Inside each room is a person who has never met the other. You give them both a random bucket of Legos and tell them, build the creator. If they both build a man with a hammer, that's a coincidence. If they both build a man with a hammer and a beard, that's a pattern. But if they both build a man with a hammer, a beard, and a missing left pinky toe, that is a transmission. We are told they developed in total isolation, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. So why is it that the god of technology in Greek, Norse, Aztec, and Chinese myth is always crippled in the legs? Today we aren't looking at just similar stories. We're looking at the possibility that human history isn't a series of random events, but software running on different hardware. We're going to look at the glitches, the arbitrary, weird, and egregious correlations that suggest we're all tapping into the same source code. To understand this, think of the human body and our environment as hardware. The physical machine, slap tile, physical machine. And now think of all of our myths, our memories, and our thoughts as software. The files and programs running on that machine. And just like the phone in your pocket, or that you're using right now to watch this video, the hardware isn't where the data actually lives. It's just a device that downloads it from the network we're all connected to. So if we're all downloading from the same source, we should be able to find the same files saved on every device. Now, when looking at these cultural similarities, some people will say it's just pattern recognition. They'll say if you have enough humans in similar environments, they'll eventually think the same things. And humanity's game of survival is kind of the same everywhere to some degree. These are the bunk coincidences or low entropy myths. For example, take the Thief of Fire file. In Greece, you have Prometheus stealing fire from the heights of Olympus. In Polynesia, you have Maui tricking the fire goddess to bring flames to humanity. In North America, the coyote steals fire from the fire beings to warm the people. Everybody needs fire to survive. So a story about stealing that power is a logical piece of software for any human being to write. Or the sacred tree file. The Norse have Yggdrasil, the ash tree that holds the 9 worlds. The Maya had the Yaxche, the saber tree that connects the heavens and the underworld. But trees grow everywhere and they reach for the sky. It's a simple metaphor for growth. These aren't the mystery. That's just the hardware reacting to the world. But what happens when the software contains arbitrary files, details so specific they have no logical reason to exist? Some of these are far too specific to be coincidence. In so much of mythology, the deity in charge of technology and magic is usually physically crippled in the legs. Like in Greece, you have Hephaestus. He's thrown from Olympus. His legs are shriveled and he builds golden robots just to help him walk. In the Norse wilds, you have Wayland the smith. A king cuts his hamstrings, the tendons in his legs to keep him prisoner. In Mexico, the Aztec god, Tezcatlipoca, a master of magic, is missing a foot, replaced by an obsidian mirror. In China, Li Tiaoguai, the master of medicine and magic, walks with an iron crutch because his leg is lame. So here's a question. Why is the tech guy always broken? It points to a universal intuition that hasn't changed in 10,000 years. To master the hidden fire, whether that's ancient blacksmithing, high magic, you sacrifice your connection to physical earth. Think about it. To build a world of the mind, you stop walking in the world of dirt. By losing his ability to move through the natural world, he gains the leverage to reshape it. It's the ancient way of saying progress is not free. In Norse myth, Mimir's head, beheaded, but preserved by Odin to give him secret wisdom. In Wales, Bran the Blessed, his head stays alive for 80 years, feasting and talking with his men. In Greece, Orpheus, his head is torn off, but continues to sing and give prophecies on the island of Lesbos. In Maya myth, Hunahpu, his severed head is placed in a tree, stays conscious, and impregnates a maiden by spitting into her hand. These myths might be telling us wisdom is not something that the brain produces, it is something that the brain receives. And if you think I'm cherry picking, look at the sheer volume of these glitches. The Seven Sisters, the Aboriginal Australians, the Greeks, and the Lakota all see the Pleiades stars as 7 girls running from a hunter. The stars don't look like girls, they're just dots. The long-tailed bear. The Greeks and the Iroquois both call the Big Dipper a bear with a long tail. Real bears don't have tails. In cultures separated by the Atlantic, the underworld isn't just a place, it's a very specific structure of 7 descending levels or pits that must be navigated. In Sumeria, in modern Iraq, Inanna must pass through 7 gates of the underworld, stripping a garment at each one. In Maya tradition, the hero twins must navigate the 7 houses of Xibalba, House of Knives, House of Cold, and so on. In Egypt, the soul must pass through the 7 arats, gates guarded by demons to reach Osiris. Why 7? Not 3. Here's one of my favorites. In Norse myth, the world is built out of a mirror. Flesh becomes earth, blood becomes sea, bones become mountains, skull becomes the sky. In Babylon, Marduk kills Tiamat and splits her body to form heaven and earth. In China, Pangu dies and his body turns into the world. In the Vedic Purusha Sukta, the cosmic being's body generates the structure of reality. Sun, moon, breath, sky, earth, different continents. But something really interesting about these giant myths is, for example, in the Norse myth, dwarves start as maggots in Ymir's flesh, and then they get upgraded into intelligent beings. And in one version of Pangu, humans come from parasites on his body. And then we have the crane leg dance. In a bizarre link back to our lame Smith, several cultures have a specific ritual dance that mimics the one-legged hop of a bird, usually a crane, to access the spirit world. In China, the Steps of Yu, a Taoist ritual dance where the shaman limps on one leg to mimic a bird and summon the stars. In Greece, the Garanos, the crane dance, performed by Theseus, mimicking the twisted path of the labyrinth with a limping, bird-like gait. In Aboriginal Australia, Broga dances require the dancer to move on one leg to bridge the gap between the living and the dream time. Why a bird? Why a limp? Why a crane? Now, there is an easy way to dismiss all this with the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. Imagine a man who fires a gun at the side of a barn, then draws a bullseye around the bullet holes to make it look like he's a marksman. Out of millions of myths, stories, and rituals across 50,000 years, you cherry pick the 12 that look alike. You ignore the 99% that are totally different. So if you dig through enough data, patterns will emerge by sheer probability. So it's not source code, it's just math. Now, that would be a fair point. That would be a fair point if these myths were very simple. If I find two cultures that both worship the sun, that's coincidence. If I find two cultures that use a hero figure, that's a pattern. But the sharpshooter argument falls apart when you run into high entropy complexity. In cryptography, a password is secure because it's arbitrary, unrelated characters. So let's look at the long-tailed bear again. The culture has to see a bear, not a wagon, not a spoon. And they have to use these specific stars, not the thousands of others nearby. They have to also include a tail. So the odds of one culture doing that is low. The odds of two disconnected cultures doing it independently is like two people guessing a 12-digit Wi-Fi password for character by complete chance. As complexity increases, the probability of independent coincidence drops towards zero. Why did the Greeks, the Chinese, and the Australians all decide that a crane-like one-legged limp was the key to unlock the spirit world? There is no evolutionary reason for a one-legged bird dance. There is no environmental reason for a god of fire to have shriveled legs. These don't feel like random bullet holes on a barn. They feel more like non-local data. If you find the same 12-digit password in two different computers, you don't say, wow, what a coincidence. You realize both machines are connected to the same server. And the system, it doesn't just show up in our stories, it shows up in our timing. Think about the agricultural revolution. Around 12,000 years ago, humans on opposite sides of the planet suddenly put down their spears and picked up seeds at around the same tiny window of time. And think about the axial age. Within a tiny window of history, the Buddha in India, Confucius in China, and the philosophers of Greece all upgraded human ethics in parallel. Today we can explain that kind of convergence with the internet, but the ancients did not have Wi-Fi. But what I do believe they had, which I think we still have, is a universal router. Because information doesn't only travel when people talk, it travels when it gains momentum. When a group of people in one corner of the world capture a new realization, the value of the individual, the power of logic, they're building a structure of belief. And as that belief gains weight, it creates a signal that ripples through the shared subconscious of the entire species. That's why Confucianism, Greek philosophy, and Buddhism look different on the surface but carry the same software patch for society. They're tuning into the same broadcast, then interpreting it through their own hardware, which all of our hardware is just different based on the environment that we are in. It appears that we're all isolated islands of consciousness fighting to survive, when in reality we're more likely like neurons part of a much greater mind. The echo in the system suggests that we're all logged into the same network. When one of us wakes up, the whole network feels the shift. When one culture finds a truth, the universal router starts streaming the data to every other device on Earth. The signal has always been there. Maybe it's time we stop trying to invent the code and start learning how to read it. Remember though, these are just my interpretations. Don't take them as fact. But do entertain the ideas because they're interesting and I do believe can give you unique insights. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you enjoyed. Peace out.